Buenas, bienvenidos a todos. Mientras ahí se van sumando.
Hello, everyone. Welcome. So we're here in Uruguay. That's why I'm wearing this light blue t-shirt, this light blue shirt. But well, today you should be wearing the Argentinian jersey. Are you nervous about that? Yes, a little, to be honest. Well, I'm guessing just like anybody else from Argentina, right? And Latin Americans as well. Yes, of course, we're all in this together. So the idea is to talk about these trends that are going to become very strong in the next couple of years. That's super apps. So let's begin by introducing ourselves. I work at Globant. My name is Matthias White. I am Florencia Rachetti. I am product manager at Globant as well. My name is Gaston Milano. I'm CTO at GeneXus. And I am Ravelino. I am UX UI at Globant. It's a pleasure to be here with you. Well, I'd like to start telling you something. On average, today we have between 40 and 60 applications in our phone. And doesn't it happen to you that sometimes you want to order some food or you want to get a cab and you have different platforms? So the same thing, for example, when you want to refill your tank, depending on the company that you're going to choose, you need to be logged in with your credit card in, and each of them will have their loyalty programs. And it always happens to me that at the time of paying, you need to do an update. So that's a problem usually. And what super apps are trying to fix here is a bit of that. With just one single login, you will have a vast array of services of different kinds that are all embedded in one single application where you can meet all your daily needs with a unified and convenient experience, all from one place, absolutely unified. And if you think about Paytm, for example, which is an Indian super app, you can clearly see all the different features that you can get. So this is it. You can pay for it. You can make payments, transfers. You can get insurance and loans. You can do investments. You have e-commerce, mobility, ticket purchases, booking a hotel, entertainment. You can do all of this in one single place. And the idea is to get as closer as we can to our users, to learn about their habits and to make everything be adapted to their profiles. If we go to WeChat, for example, which is another super app from China, and you see all the things that we do from the moment that we wake up until we go to bed. For example, we watch the news. For example, the first thing that I did this morning was I wanted to check how was Messi doing and if he had an injury or not, and he's okay, so we're happy. But yeah, it's what you got to do when you wake up these days, right? So after that, of course, you want to read the news. You can do that in WeChat. Then when you're on your way to work, you can pay for transport and you can have access to entertainment while you're traveling, while you're commuting. You get to work, you pay for breakfast, you begin to talk to your workmates and your group friends. And you have all the chat features because, as you know, WeChat was a chatting application at the beginning. Then you go for lunch, you split the bill. So all the solutions to all your needs are met in one single place, and that gives you a unique experience. Absolutely, Mati. We were just discussing now before the talk that I went to China a couple of not that long ago. We've been with GeneXus present in China for years, and it's exactly how you describe it, right? With WeChat, you have this amazing phenomenon that emerged in China where you can just do all, you can do everything, and the whole population has access to it. And it's okay. It started being a social application. It could be something similar to what WhatsApp is here in the West. But well, from there, you can have access to all these services. And it's just like what you said. You have all your interactions through WeChat. That means that in China, it doesn't mean that in China we didn't have browsers or search engines. For example, you have Baidu, which is just like Google, and you also have Amazon, for example, like Alibaba. And well, those players began to be a bit restless because all the interactions where users were all the interactions that users were doing, they wanted to be there present. And there was this sort of war that began between Alibaba and Baidu and WeChat, of course, and they started building these super apps because of what you just said, right? Because you get this unified experience in a native application. Yes, indeed. You actually have Alipay, which is the payment application for Alibaba. So they all usually have this core business and they end up adding new features which is what we call mini apps, right? In the super app. It is completely different in the States and in Europe, where people are much more used to interacting with more than 3 billion apps and moving from one to the other. But then people get tired because we forget our passwords. We always need to be updating everything. So that's probably the biggest difference. And here I want to jump straight to, for example, the different industries. If you take a look at WeChat on a day-to-day basis and how they interact with their users, there is potential and space and room for everyone. It doesn't mean that you will just be a bank or you will just be maybe a business that specializes in retail or mobility. But if you just want to have this unified experience, you can turn yourself into a super app. And if you want to have your customers have all their needs met in one place, you can also do that with super apps. The same thing for governments. If a government wants to provide the citizens with a solution to pay for taxes, for instance, or any kind of interaction such as mobility in the cities, or parking that you need to pay for. So all these little things. Yes, absolutely. You're moving from an e-government to what we call e-citizens. So you have the customer at the very center, in this case, a citizen, so that you can provide them with experiences through these services. And it's exactly what you're describing. It applies to every single industry and how you conceptualize super apps. Yes, absolutely. And you will just log in once in a super app and you will have everything. It's something similar to Netflix, which is a streaming platform where you have series and movies created by Netflix, but then also not just the ones created by Netflix, but other producers, other companies began to create content, and they were also found in Netflix. And that is similar to super apps because you can have a core business, and then you can add mini apps on top of those, which can be done by yourself or by third parties. And you can be your own super app, or you can also be someone that chooses to give their services to someone else, and you will be in someone else's super app. So what you're trying to do here is you're trying to improve the offer to increase customer loyalty. And as a company, you're trying to make everything more transactional and this new business model. That is where we're walking towards. And that is the biggest advantage that we can get to our clients here in Globant. Maybe, Flora, you can tell us a bit more about that. Absolutely. In Globant, we're working to apply our expertise in technology, business, and user experience into implementing these super app strategies in different industries. And we are actively working on that. Tell me a bit about the advantages and what do you think are the main benefits? Okay, so let's talk a bit about the history of super apps. When they emerged in Asia, two things were happening. First of all, a low banking degree, and this mobile-first trend of this population. In Latin America, we're beginning to see that these features are shared because we have, on the one hand, 70% of our population that is not part of the banking system, or at least not enough. And we also have that mobile users penetration will keep on increasing, and towards 25, it's going to be above 70%. So we are finding ourselves in very fertile ground to implement this sort of strategy. Indeed, implementation is quite clear an aspect, right, in terms of how you can use super apps for this. Yes, absolutely. And I would like to tell you a bit about the first case of a super app of a Latin American bank. I will not tell you this in detail because of confidentiality issues, but we can tell you a bit about how it works and what it does. So we have this native application, which was created by the bank, trying to generate a customer base that would be constantly interacting with the application. And by this, we mean that users will be accessing this application several times in a day, trying to get access to services, which are the mini apps. Of course, the bank provides users with financial services. Users can make payments and transfers, but at the same time, they will have access to a wide variety of services. For example, asking for a cab, or buying food, or tickets to the cinema, or maybe even booking a holiday, and so on and so forth, because the number of services that you can use, that you can have as mini apps, is limitless. These mini apps can belong to the bank itself, or they may have been developed by third parties, which have partnerships, so that both can get the best of it. So we have users in a very convenient position with a unified experience. They just need to log in once into their applications. They will have access to all these services. So a lot of their needs on a daily basis, they will be just met with one application. Imagine that all this switching between apps and remembering whether or not you have that installed, that all is figured out by super apps. Terrific. Maybe, Leo, you can tell us a bit about the benefits and the UX. Yes, absolutely. As we were just saying and going over what we have said in terms of having a super app that will offer a unified, consistent experience, I think that the benefits are very clear, right? Before, when you needed to maybe use 10 apps to just solve one issue, now you will have just one application. For example, this applies to resources that are consumed by those phone applications when we're talking about the low end or mid end, and the fact that you can just log in once. Not only that, for example, if you want to make a purchase, imagine that you're in the banking system and you can just have it very easy in how you find a mechanism to make a payment, and it gives you security as a user. And you can have this ecosystem that is meeting a lot of your needs in different contexts. And this is a key issue of user experience, because you will have applications that will be there for you for the different interactions that you need when you need them. I think that the benefits to users are very clear. And I wouldn't want to forget to mention that we also have benefits for all the brands that tag along this proposal, because first of all, you have this umbrella. There is the super app that's going to be integrated with your mini app, and then as part of the general guidelines that they have, because the idea is to be really careful and to curate that user experience. It gives you some leeway so that from the point of view of visual design, the brand can express whatever they feel that they need to express. Always, as I said just now, following some general guidelines that, depending on the industry, maybe we could discuss it in further depth. They may be a bit more flexible or a bit more strict. Yes, and that's a bit about the difference that we have seen in the past in terms of implementation, right? What you're trying to do is you're integrating a mini app of a brand and you're giving it a differential of experience within your super app. That is not just the fact that all brands will have the same web page and the same way of doing things. It's not a template. We're trying to avoid a template, right? So depending on maybe how much you pay, the template that you will get. No, that's not what we want here. You can have a clear user experience. The other thing that I was thinking about as Flora was speaking just now is in this project that we were involved together, for example, the issue of time. As you were just saying, Leo, I just wanted to add to what you said, because how long can it take you to build a mini app? You know, the time aspect, of course, the answer will depend on how much you have to do, and the correct answer is always it depends. But for those micro interactions, because for example, oftentimes you have to do things like special offers and stuff like that that need to be done really fast. And that for a micro interaction, it's taking us maybe a month, not much more than that. But one of the most important elements that we were discussing with Leo as we were preparing this presentation is design, right? Because sometimes that is where you have most of the time that you can try to accelerate and speed up. Absolutely. I think that the design teams at Globant have the experience not only to deal with this issue, to work with super apps, but also to couple and to blend in with those projects where you have a number of actors such as product owners and developing teams. And I think that this is, well, I wouldn't call it good news because it's something that GeneXus has already incorporated for a while, but with the added advantage that GeneXus now allows you to import files from Figma. So we're not just saying here that the methodology will allow us to integrate our teams better than before, but also all that transition and all that input from design assets that go to development that sometimes may lead to some noise. They have been really optimized by the fact that GeneXus is now importing directly from Figma, and that is it's doing it better and better. I don't want to get too technical, but everyone knows that Figma nowadays is the standard in the market. And also following a certain a number of conventions that the team at GeneXus have been working on, that means that everybody is speaking the same language, which of course optimizes time to the fullest. And we know, as was said just 2 minutes ago, we have to really worry about time to market. Yeah, going back to the banking example, the super app owner can, for example, have seasonal campaigns. So you own a super app and you can associate with partners, and you can have Christmas offers, or you can have Mother's Day. And of course, time to market is critical, because if you want your campaign to be effective, you need to try to get there to the market with your product at an optimal time. Imagine being late for Mother's Day. Of course, you would be missing a window of opportunity to generate transactions and sales. Yes, absolutely. The whole implementation strategy is so important. And how you integrate from different mini apps. Of course, you need to delineate a very clear partnership strategy before you start implementing everything. And let us talk about the benefits for super app owners when it comes to implementing this kind of product strategy. First of all, we have this use case that is centralized. We have a user that is frequently having access to one single application a number of times a day, and also you have cross-selling benefits for those products or services that you or third parties commercialize. You also have business vertical opportunities that were not in the radar because they were completely outside your original scope. And they are also very useful to try to promote loyalty programs and benefit programs that our young users that are demanding mobile-first experiences are really eager to have. But not just mobile applications, because super apps is something that can be used for desktop applications, and we are foreseeing that this will be expanded to having this immersive experiences in the metaverse or IoT technology or chatbots. So yes, absolutely. It is clear that we need to have a clear strategy of how we're going to implement this, and then how you're intending to add many apps in the short and the midterm. So maybe, Gaston, from the technology side of things, could you tell us a bit about the first steps and how you start? Yes, sorry, just let me tell you a bit about the history of why we delved into super apps. As I was saying, we were very surprised by users and how much users were using it. We thought that it was a crazy idea, that it was really cool. It's completely different here in the West, where we use so many apps, but you know, there you have, for example, in China, more than 1 million mini apps in that super app. Yes, more than 1 million. I had to double check, because I thought to myself, am I just overblowing it? No, absolutely not. So it was evident that from the user's perspective, there was something there, something quite interesting. So over time, we began to do some research in GeneXus regarding this issue. As a matter of fact, we are members of the W3C, which is a group of mini apps, and we have worked a lot in that. And imagine that you have a product, you have your partners, and you need to make it happen. You need to work with a super app strategy. Well, you need to know exactly what is the technological architecture that you need to make this happen in a reasonable time to market, as you said. So for that, we can't think about super apps if we don't think about many apps. Oftentimes I hear this is a super app, this is a super app, and then when I go there, what I find is that they have a native application that does a lot of things. But it would be impossible for that to have millions of applications integrated, because it's not dynamically loading them, or it's loading templates. So Okay, so what you're saying is that you need a platform and a long-term strategy to say this is going to become a super app so that you can add mini apps to it and not just one application with a number of services. Yes, the short answer would be that you need to make a decision, a strategic decision for the mid to long term, where you will be adding business partners and you will need to have a tech platform, which, GeneXus nowadays, after more than 3 or 4 years of work, we have released with GeneXus 18 a super app platform, which is the only one that I know that is established and that it considers all the elements that you need to take into account in your architecture. For example, how to build a super app, how to build mini apps, how to dynamically load them through a render, and how to have a mini app store in that architecture. Render, you're taking me in a different direction. What do you mean when you say render? Of course, yeah. So you were just mentioning the case of Netflix, right? So what is, of course, the main thing is the movies that it has, but from the technological point of view, what is the most important thing? It's streaming technology, right? How you can just be there on Netflix, on the app,
plataformas, puedo traer la película en
or
forma
any of the
dinámica.
platforms, and you can just bring that movie to you dynamically without having to download the movie when you want to watch it, which is what we used to do before. We had to download a film before we could watch it. So what we are really working on here is how we can manage to have this native experience for the mini apps that are running in that super app. Truly native, because it would be really easy to have a web view and just link it to whatever you want to link it, which you can do in the platform. But it's much more complex if you want to have a native view of your mini apps. Yes, of course, and that undermines the user experience, right? Yeah, absolutely, because it would be like having a link to a web page, right? Which is not new. So this is much better integrated to the native experience, to the different interactions and things that you do with your mobile devices. Yes, absolutely. So I'm guessing that everyone is wondering now, okay, what about data privacy and how do you make sure that all your data are secure? And how does the super app owner manage this? Yes, that is definitely one of the main questions whenever you want to have a super app strategy for anything in your core business. So the owner of the core business, and this is something that we've been working on a lot, is how is the super app going to communicate with the different mini apps? The mini app owner can decide what is the only thing that mini apps can see. Okay, there are some underlying technical aspects of all the things that I'm saying, but then how are mini apps going to communicate with one another? Or not? Maybe you don't want them to communicate with one another. Yeah, so you say, if I'm buying some ice cream in this shop, I know that the ice cream parlor owner is going to say, somebody bought an ice cream here, but I don't want everybody else to find out. So that's why we have what we call the sandbox in the different mini apps, so that their information is protected. And those that want to share it may do so with the B2B mechanisms. So security and data privacy is something that we have worked a lot in this architecture, and it makes putting things into production very easy because it's something that we have used in several projects. Okay, so imagine that I've got my business, my core business, and I've got my audience, and I want to turn my application into a super app. What are the first steps? I have my native application. Is that architecture good? How far am I from having a super app? What would be the first step in this journey with Globant and GeneXus? Okay, so if you did your application with GeneXus, that's one thing. But one of the main things that's going to happen is that a native application, you have your audience and you want to transform it. Yeah, that's something that is quite typical. In that case, time will not be, it will not depend. It will usually take us between 1 and 2 weeks to transform a native application that was not necessarily built with GeneXus into a super app that can begin to render mini apps within it. As a matter of fact, we did that with Start Me Up and a couple of other clients, this bank that I mentioned, and other clients as well. And this process of transforming this super app written in any language, which does not necessarily need to be native. It can be React Native or Flutter, and you can transform it into a super app in a very straightforward way. So that's step number one, right? Transform my native application into a super app. And then, of course, you can align the different business partners so that you can start developing the different mini apps and how you will manage each of them. Because you don't want to have to publish them on the App Store every single time that you're releasing a new mini app. You will have a mini app store, which is where you have all mini apps, and the super app owner, which is, for example, the bank, in the case that Flora told us about, will manage the versions of those super apps, of those mini apps, when they will appear, in what context. You know, for example, some mini apps may appear or may be visible when you're within the facility, the Globant offices, because it only makes sense for people who work at Globant. So the governance of those different mini apps and its versions will be done by that mini app center that has already been built and that can be deployed on premises or in the cloud. Okay, so you need to sort of define what your first integrations will be. So at a business level, who will be your partners and who will be there with you? And you need to try to reach out to that audience that you still haven't reached, right? And then you will figure this out by having mini apps. Yes, no, absolutely. I think that step number one is trying to find those clients, those customers that will give you impact. You don't need to have millions of mini apps in a super app. Some never will, and it's not a condition, but you can have some crucial integrated services. As we have observed, for example, in this case, you can buy some stuff. You have some retail mini apps which are integrated, and those integrations, those interactions will be relevant to both participants, for the super app and for the partner. And what about implementation times? Because you told us a bit about how to transform a native application into a super app. What about implementation? Well, again, right, it depends. But generally, what Leo was saying, you have the design aspect. It depends on whether you have the services ready. And for that, it's going to depend whether it's a small integration, because the design ops process is really fine-tuned and it's working really well. With GeneXus, we have accelerated all integrations. So in that sense, we're saying that the cases that we've had take a couple of months before you can have a relatively sophisticated mini app in some cases. Perhaps if it's a simpler thing, you could do it in a week, but it really depends on the case and what you have already done. If you have the services already, for example, you can just import from Figma and you connect it to services, then it just takes a while. Yes, and this really goes in keeping with these seasonal strategies, right? Absolutely. If it's about Mother's Day, you're not going to spend 5 months working on this. You can do this in a couple of weeks, and you should be able to have it in a time to market that makes sense. And that is what makes the difference about this. No one is going to put an application into production for Mother's Day for people to download. No one would ever download that from an app center just for Mother's Day. But if you're in a place where you've already been, an application that you've already used, you will find it because it will appear and you will just dynamically load it. Imagine, for example, something about your birthday. Maybe the bank will tell you, hey, happy birthday, I will give you this check. I don't know. I mean, you can have different kinds of offers. Yeah, all that new stuff, all those news will be there in the super app. And I think that identification, authentication, and payment, having that already figured out is huge, because people always feel afraid of maybe, putting in their card number or whatever. That makes it very easy, right? Yes, absolutely. We still have a lot of friction in that aspect of how we make payments, and I think that super apps are trying to put an end to this friction that will eventually be over because of the different trends that we have discussed and how everything has been evolving in the last couple of years. But probably super apps will be accelerating that friction reduction. Well, thank you so much for those minutes. That QR code that you see on the screen, if you want to know more about super apps, you will find it in genexus.com/superapps, or otherwise you can just reach out to us at Globant or GeneXus. We have a lot of stuff about technology and business profile and UX that we can share that is so necessary if you want to take that first step into creating that super app. Are you going to be with your phone on Sunday at midday Argentina time? Will you be there answering emails? I don't think so. I don't know if we have any questions on the chat, but maybe we can move on to the first question, if there are any. I have a native application with a huge user community, but I have no payment mechanisms. Can I build this? Can I turn this into a super app? The short answer is yes. At Globant, we have a number of solutions. We have Wasabi and we have Globant X for everything that concerns payment mechanisms and methods. So if you want to integrate payments, you can easily do it from Globant. Second question, what is the governance, the data governance model when you have personal data and you are sharing information with other partners? Maybe Gaston, you can answer that?
Este tipo de preguntas, lo que tenemos que hacer es...
Okay, so we need to define these questions in the prep stage. How you do data governance is going to be defined by the super app owner. And how they're going to do this with the different partners. And then all the governance in the evolution of each mini app is, well, the owner of that is going to be the super app owner through the mini app store. I'll tell you more. They may even say this kind of mini apps have violated certain terms and conditions, and they can just put them down. But then it is practically just like any other business where you're going to have where you're going to do business with different partners. You need to have this technically pre-established. You can do whatever you want, and you can share data or you can restrict data sharing. You may grant permits to have access to some data from some mini apps and not to others. So you have a permanent permit mechanism that will vary depending on the mini apps that you have. Yes, of course, it will be restricted for many apps, but the super app owner will always try to have access to all the data so that customers will be interacting during the day as much as they can so that we can know more about you as a customer and we can give you something that is really customized to your experience. Another question, are there any sustainability benefits in having one super app instead of having different apps? Well, actually, the reason why mini apps exist is because we have a super app. Maybe, I don't know if the question is about you having a number of applications versus having one single super app. I didn't really get the sustainability part. In terms of maintenance, I think that having one strategy where you have several mini apps that you can have dynamically loading and you can have different versions without having to publish that in the App Store, I think that is much more sustainable and easier to maintain than if you have to have a new version every single time that you do an update. So from that point of view, if that is what they meant by the question, that would be the answer. Okay, let's have another one. Can mini apps use camera and Bluetooth services from devices? Yes, absolutely. One of the things that we have as a differential is that rendering all these native applications allows you not only to have the visual part, but also how you interact with the mobile device. So Flor was telling us about immersive interfaces with augmented reality or a Room API in Apple. So you can directly use that from the mini app as long as the super app owner has given that mini app the corresponding permits. So all these things are things that you always need to take into account. Okay, cool. Thank you, Gaston.
Señor Director.
Okay, Mr. Director, we have another question, I think. Oh, go ahead. That one's good. Do you need to download the original application to have your super app working? If not, aren't you afraid that maybe the super app will be blocked by Apple, because Apple will depend on how many applications we download from their store, right? Wow, this is a really good question. I mean, they're all really good questions, but this one is a huge recurring concern, and I think that it's great that we are talking about this. Of course, all the different applications that we were just mentioning have been approved in the market, right? So I think that just the fact that you have them is very loquacious, but we're also working on that. We also worked on that. We talked to Apple, we talked to Google, and the rules that you cannot break are Google and Apple's guidelines that say, for example, that you cannot have digital sales without, for example, working with purchases. But from a conceptual point of view, this is the same as any other application. So long as they don't break privacy or selling rules, then you will be okay. What we're talking about here is a retail, which you already have, that is just adding features and services which already exist. And usually it will not be a big difference for Apple whether they have 100 applications or just everything in one. Okay, let's go to another one. Do you need to have the same front-end layout in the super app when you go to different mini apps? Okay, can I take that one? Yeah, great. I think we slightly touched on it, but just to say it again, so we want to have a consistent experience and we want to curate our users' experiences. So first and foremost, it's going to depend on who you're working with, because if you're talking about a government level, then there's going to be a trend to try to be a bit more consistent, or at least to have those general guidelines be a bit more detailed and strict. And maybe you get some more leeway when you talk about a super app that it comes from a different kind of industry and you can have different sort of brands, but you will always have guidelines that will make sure that, for instance, you will not have 10 different ways of doing one same thing. If we talk about user experience, for instance, and how you can try to get some brand identity, the limit will be not to confuse the person that is having any kind of interaction with the mini app. So dialogue is a key aspect, especially when you have teams, because maybe you have a design team that has experience working on other platforms. They want to integrate to this ecosystem and they want to build a mini app. So it is key to have the design team that generated the super app and that created those guidelines to put them in a conversation to know what they can and what they cannot do. As I said, we need to take a look at this case by case, because you will always have guidelines, but then you will have some leeway to just make modifications depending on the industry that you're working in. Okay, just let me add a little bit to what you said. Take a look at Apple, for example, with the different apps. It's a platform, and Apple doesn't want to have any kind of application in the App Store. They have guidelines, and this is like that. They have guidelines. It doesn't mean that visually you will be losing your brand identity. It's not a template. You will see it as you begin to see super apps, which is going to be very soon. But I don't know, you're a coffee shop and you can totally have your brand trying to make and keep those interactions consistent. For example, how you get to the mini app, when you want to make a payment, when you want to log in, you will need consistency in those aspects. But when you want to show your brand, you want your brand to be consistent with itself, not with the super app. And that is going to be an amazing mix that we will achieve. Yes, and also we need to take care of the product's learnability. As a user, for example, if you are used to making a payment following step 1, 2, and 3, if you change many apps, you want it to be exactly the same. You don't want to learn again, because that will require unnecessary effort. So you will keep these guidelines, right? Absolutely. The greatest advantage is consistency and unification, which doesn't mean that many apps will be clones. But you always need to safeguard that consistency and trying to remove that friction that you would have otherwise. Yeah, you're just talking about clones, and we have this question that goes, in one mini app of one provider, can you distribute more than one super app? Is that something that the architecture has foreseen, that you can replicate mini apps in different super apps? Yes, absolutely. But you have to do that with GeneXus. Yeah. You will have one application that was done with GeneXus. And then again, I want to go back to security. You have an encryption system where a mini app was built for a super app. But if another provider will allow you to use their private key for it to be loaded in a different super app, that's okay. But it's going to be a one-to-one thing. It's not that anyone can dynamically load things in your super app. It's what we are seeing in China already, right? Any service provider needs to integrate to 3 or 4 super apps, and they need to develop 3 to 4 implementations. So you have this explosion in multi-experience. What we're trying to do in GeneXus is to have it cross-platform and cross. So the idea is to bridge that gap, right? This is a very important business aspect, as you know. Okay, from the DevOps process point of view, what is the greatest challenge when it comes to super apps? Wow, that's a great question. Great question.
Estoy pensando en este momento a ver cuál es.
Let me think about it. So I think it's quite clear that you become platform and new artifact is born, which is the mini app store. So instead of working in a system, you're working in an ecosystem, right, with different partners that eventually will have their own DevOps process, and you need to have an agreement with them of how you're going to connect with your own DevOps process and how the authorization processes will be. So one of the things that you have in the mini app store is the review and acceptance processes for a super app, and that will be automated. Yeah. So I don't see this as a problem, but of course there is always room for improvement to change the DevOps for super apps. But I'll sleep on it. That's a great question. Okay, great. Terrific. If you want to know more about super apps or GeneXus, or if you have any candidates that you would like to propose to start this path of becoming a super app, we will share with you the QR code. You can reach us. You can send us an email. And again, you can go to genexus.com/superapps for more information and to know more about this thing that is a trend and that is coming strong in the next couple of years. Thank you so much, guys. A pleasure.